Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Phil for another spoiler discussion. And this week we are talking episode 3 of The Acolyte, which is now streaming on Disney Plus worldwide for everybody that has been watching it. But before we start talking about what's going to be, I think, a pretty monumental discussion with a lot of things to talk about, Phil, how are we doing today?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Happy to be back. And yeah, there's going to be a lot to kind of break down this one.
I agree with you. And I guess kind of where we're going with this, last week we were live for episodes 1 and 2. We have no Sam or Dave this week, so we hope to get them on in the next few weeks and a few other people that we may have lined up. But the story is not necessarily coming together, but the past is. And we got ourselves a flashback episode. I don't think any of us thought we'd get the flashback this early. And I guess not my question, but my statement. And I think we'll be on the same page with this. Not the only flashback we're probably going to get for the series. We are 3 episodes in out of 8. It is by all means a mystery series at this point in time in respect to speculation, to story, that there is plot points unraveling and a lot more to come. And I have to really re-emphasize that we are 3 episodes in because apparently every week it's finished. But before we try and get into any of that, Phil, I'm going to put you on the spot. Last week we spoke episodes 1 and 2.
Yep.
Didn't massively speak on the episodes themselves, more so the setup, the characters, the entry points of this. How are you feeling 1 week on?
I mean, I've rewatched the first 2 4 times now, 5 times, something like that. It's obviously I'm heavily into the whole High Republic era, so this was going to be my jam from the start. But it's a different story. It's a brand new setting for the TV universe, as it were. Part if you don't count the Young Jedi Adventures, which is, of course, is a very obviously a children's show. It's good to watch if you just want to switch your brain off. It's quite fun, but it's obviously this is the more serious kind of grown up. Okay, here is a new story and a new setting. For those who don't know the universe, this era well, it's something that's completely different. So I was looking forward to seeing what it would bring and how it would come about. And this surprised me in terms of, we'll get into this episode obviously as we go on, but from the first 2 and this one, it's uncharted territory for Star Wars, and in what essentially is a murder mystery, but it's kind of cool. I mean, I dig it.
Yeah, and that's where I kind of am with this. That I know I was lucky to see the first episodes early. I've not rewatched them. I'm actually gonna. Did I do this with Kenobi? Or I did it with one of the shows where I watch it week to week. Then in between episodes 7 and 8, I will probably rewatch the whole series just to get that view. And I do think, like any decent murder mystery type thing, I keep calling it's not like a Knives Out mystery. Sorry, it's just on point because I know filming started this week, so it's in my head. But it feels like for the first time, and this is an overstatement saying it, that I don't want to say bar Andor because Andor's very different. It's almost 4 films put together in separate story points, but this feels like the first of the Star Wars shows we've got where it is a week-to-week viewing, that there is going to be that week in between, the gap, people discussing, theorizing what's happening. And because it is a different era, because it's new characters, we don't have the obvious foresight that we have in stuff like Kenobi, where it's like, haha, Darth Vader shall appear, but he can't obviously do anything because they're all here 10 years later. So I do think the time setting something in its advantage and kind of kickstarting with this. Let's really get into this. We're going to talk about not necessarily a beginning episode, but this is a flashback, and it is beginning with Main Oceatry, and that's one way to put it. But I want to jump in with something, and maybe I should be saying this at the end, but I want to say it now. The first 2 episode titles, forgive me, I don't have their names to hand, I should. There is a slash, and each episode title is a perspective of one of the twins. I will bring them up in a minute. And what I've kind of noticed when I went on Disney Plus this morning to watch this first thing, because I didn't watch episodes 3 and 4 on the press screeners, I watched them normally. Well, normally, 4's not out yet, obviously. I thought it was very interesting that episode 3, there is no slash. The episode title is just simply Destiny. And I think that's for Osha. And what I'm doing with this, maybe we're speculating too far early, but I think we're going to get another flashback episode. And I think we're going to get May's perspective. And you might be saying, oh, but May's in this. Once you get past the Jedi stuff, the training, I think we are going to get the perspective of May for this episode. And I think it'll be an episode, not next week, maybe not even the week after, but I think we're going to revisit what happened today in its entirety from the second perspective. There's a lot more to be revealed, which we'll probably talk about near the end. But I think the episode titles are very much a key of this. And certainly People are like, oh, it hasn't filmed everything today. Yes, that's the point. It's 3 episodes in. We're not going to. Hopefully, I would rather find out not everything's episode 8. I like a mini series that comes together and sort of evolves into its own thing. Whether we get it earlier, I'm not really fussed. I just hope next week isn't a rash man. Here's the other flashback. Here's the other perspective. But I kind of wanted to grab your thoughts on. I don't know if you've seen about the episode titles or if you'd even thought of what I mentioned or if you sort of worked it out too.
Yeah, no, I worked out pretty quick when I was watching it. The first two obviously do have that slash, and it is very. Once you've watched them for the first time, you get it. It clicks as to why it's the opposites. Like last week's obviously was revenge and justice. It's the two opposite ends of the spectrum. This one being one whole 1 year, I had that same thought of it is a flashback, but it is flashback more from May's perspective. I think episode 6 will be May's. I think you'll get 2 more regular. Yeah. You'll get the last flashback, and then you'll get the conclusion to this particular series. And I do like how they've done it so far. It's very clear how they've done it. If once it clicks, it clicks. But there's an awful lot that this left on the table. And again, I don't like it when people do complain, oh, it didn't reveal everything. Like, cool, do you want everything spoon-fed to you? Do you want it all right at the beginning? Or do you actually, want to watch the story and watch it develop in front of you? Because this is far from done, and it's far from clear-cut as well. This episode leaves a lot of questions still unanswered. It gives you some, and then gives you more questions to ask afterwards. So it's very clear. This is also the first episode not to be written by Leslie Headland. So again, it's something completely different from that perspective as well. And it's not a huge thing, but it's just something to, be worthy of note. But yeah, I have liked the naming culture so far. It does kind of lend. It also lends itself to the High Republic era. So some of the books are kind of, for example, we've got 2 books coming out later this year, which is Tears of the Nameless and Fear the Nameless. We've had the Path of Vengeance and Path of Deceit. There's been a kind of a loss of that style, so it fits in with that, even if it's just on a small scale. But I like it.
Yeah, and I'm kind of with you on this. I'm glad you brought the fact Leslie Helen didn't write this episode, and the director as well. I've just forgotten the name, but it's the director of After Yang. If anyone's seen that, a very good Colin Farrell sci-fi film from only a few years ago. Is it Kagonda? Apologize, I should have that as well. You can tell clearly got back from work and doing this not as quick notes as normal. And I'm kind of thinking the direction in this episode did feel different. And actually, that's just come to my attention. He's directing 2 episodes of the series. So I wonder if he's directing the other flashback.
The other half. It would make sense, and I would like it if that's the case, purely because it would be the same idea from the same person for the different perspectives. It won't be too much of a clash, because that's sort of sometimes we know this well from 7, 8, and 9 when you have one overarching story, but 3 different people working towards the same end, it can end a little bit muddled, whereas this, I think, will be more, it'll fit together as a whole, but if the 2 halves are done by the same person, it will fit a little bit nicer.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and I think that's the big thing for me, is that dependent on the payoff of this, and people might be saying, "Oh, we're not directing on the episode." It all comes hand in hand. That I'm sure, like after 8 weeks, when 8 episodes come up, and listen, I'm going to jump in. We haven't actually said this, so let's get people going. If you have watched it, please comment your thoughts. I don't care if you dislike the show or if you like the show. I know people don't. I know some people, close friends, that said, "Hey, you know what? This isn't for me so far," and that's okay. And I've seen people saying, "Hey, this is for me. I love it," and I'm like, "That's great too." Like, as long as your opinion is about the story and the stuff, and even if you think, "Oh, it breaks canon," comment that. I want to hear your thoughts on the Anakin stuff, because that's something we're going to talk about in a bit of time. And there's a lot of pre-existing stuff, and you're also getting the very typical. Guess what, guys? Last week's problem was fire in space, which was proven throughout the entire week that there's fire in all of Star Wars. And this week it's breaking canon. That's right. George Lucas's canon is broken. Again, perspective, intelligence, knowledge, you're all better than that. I implore you to do research. It's not hard to do. I'm not dismissing your thoughts on that. If you think it's broken, that's absolutely fine. But you can't be wild. Again, 3 episodes into a series of 8, which is clearly setting up the events of the main saga, the literal description of an acolyte in episode 1, and in the trailers. And yes. So please do comment your thoughts. And this is nice when we get chats going with Star Wars, especially, again, perspective is everything. And I hope to have some more, because the High Republic and I don't. And I've kind of said last week too, like, I'm not 100% certain if I'm in on this era of Star Wars. I saw it in Fallen Survivor and I didn't mind it. I'm not 100% sure on this, but again, I'm going to give it a series to say, okay, is it for me? Is it not? There's a lot of things I'm enjoying about it, and there's a lot of things I'm like, hey, I'm not 100% certain so far, and I'm curious to see where my opinions go about that and where the show goes with that. But going back to the core of things, talking May and Osha, let's just talk about their perspective. They are twins, and now we know 3 episodes in that one is clearly evil, one isn't. Yes, it's a bit on the nose. I don't mind that. What are you thinking before we even get to the witches? Their relationship, May almost has an obsession with her sister, and that they have to do everything together, versus the other sister who clearly doesn't want this life that we're going to obviously explore more with the witches.
Yeah, I mean, you've hit it pretty much nail on the head. The whole twin dilemma comes down to a lot of when you see people out in the real world who have, twins, a lot when they're young ages, they kind of do everything together, kind of dress the same, look the same, everything's kind of that similar vibe, but it's not being forced on. I think Osha definitely has her own mind. It's very clear as to she sees beyond the 4 walls that are around her, especially ones that sound rather restrictive. I mean, the more you hear about it, the more it's very much, this is a closed off gated community. They're away from the prying eyes of the Republic. They're trying to be out the way because they, one wrong move and they'll get wiped out. So the community is safe. Well, safe for a reason. May has quite clearly drank the Kool-Aid. She's very much involved and very much being down that same path as I'll try and remember her name, not Mother Anastasia, the other mother.
Mother Coral.
Coral, that's it. Yeah, she's very much on that side. I think Osha very much sides with Mother Anastasia. So I think it's kind of you can see the split, and you can see again, May instigates the the stars above, the sea below, that whole kind of, trying to reinforce Osha that, they're supposed to be there together and they're supposed to do this. And Osha, I mean, I love just even the little drawings, all the rest of it you see for the Jedi Order that it gets revealed obviously much later on, but the whole individuality within it. So you see both perspectives, but it's very clear that they are very close as siblings, but they're not the same person. Yeah,
and I kind of like that we don't just need a drawn off, oh, they're the exact same thing, but light and dark. Now, I have been watching Star Wars Visions for the first time recently. I'm not to go off point, but there is that episode with the twins, and it's not my cup of tea, if I'm honest. I liked a lot of Visions, but I'm it's like every miniseries, there's things you're going to lean to more than others, and I had that with a few. But twins is obviously something not unfamiliar to Star Wars. The obviously Luke and Leia parallels coming in with this series too. I don't think it's just trying to be this. I literally think the concept of twins is different. You've got Amanda Stenberg playing the leads, both leads in the present day, which I don't think's happened before with Star Wars. Yes, there's been twins before, but I don't think you've had the same actor playing multiple leading roles. Yes, we've had Warwick Davis playing many roles. Technically, Tamara Morrison too.
Tamara Morrison kind of takes the biscuit on that one. Or if you want to go down that road, Dee Bradley Baker,
yeah, especially for Bad Batch, who can alternate voices between takes, which is still incredible feat of voice acting, which I think is not spoken about enough, and probably would be if it wasn't Star Wars. But going back to these two for this, I like the dynamic that we get so far. But as you said, they're kids. It's a flashback. So where I'm being curious by this is, okay, what's the purpose of, who are these mothers? Who's this cult they're with? Is this their family? Is this their tribe? Like, what's happened here? And then we find out it's essentially a group of witches. Witches also not new to Star Wars. See, the Night Sisters, which have been around for however many years. And I think this is where people are getting wild online. And again, I'm fine for differing opinions on it. It's fine as long as you, again, like have a debate, have a discussion, have intake. Don't just go screeching and shouting for no reason. Give reasons, have a discussion, calm yourself down. It's a fictional series. And where we kind of come with it is the idea that these twins were conceived by, they don't call it the Force, but it is. And it is part of what the witches have been trying to do. It's the first time this, I don't want to call it an experiment, but it's the first time they've been able to manipulate things into giving the twins existence. I like this. And I really understand if this puts people off. This isn't for them. Oh, this is too much. The Anakin stuff. I don't want to get into a whole he's right, who's right, blah, blah, blah. Because I feel like I don't mean to, but I really struggle with some people's what's the word? Not like media literacy, but the opposite, illiteracy. That's it.
Mm.
And I don't want to do the George Lucas piss take response of it's like poetry of their own. I mean, technically it is, but we spoke about this before live. It's very abundantly clear where the series is going. And I'm not saying Darth Plagueis and his apprentice to be slayed, blah, blah, blah. I mean, like the literal sense of the concept of the Force. You've got Leslie Headland, who last year at Celebration gave a great interview saying that her perspective for the show was from the point of view of the villains, and that through the show being the point of view of the villains, we're going to see the Jedi being antagonists rather than protagonists once, which is a really interesting dynamic, which Lucasfilm are happy to run with, and they basically gave her the show off the back of that. And to me, that makes me think we're going to see a lot more wild stuff as the show develops over the coming weeks. And again, today is a flashback one. I will also add, I do think they should have dropped the first 3 episodes together. If I'm really honest, I understand why they didn't want to, because you got 2 episodes set in the same timeline and one a flashback. But to wait a week for a flashback and wait another week to get back to where you were 2 weeks before, that is, in the modern day era, probably a bit tricky for some. But I really like this idea that these witches have finally found a way to create life. Unnatural, as Palpatine once put it, as they put it in this too. And you know me, Phil, I don't read the comics. And I don't mean that as an arrogant perspective.
No.
I began reading them, and then too many were made, and I just zoned out. And this is going back to the first era post Disney. And I remember in one, I didn't read it at this point, but we got essentially the birth of Anakin. And I don't know the context, so you can please correct me. There was the image of Darth Sidious basically with his arms around Shmi, manipulating her body to basically birth Anakin via midichlorians. I thought we were going to get the word midichlorians today, but we didn't one day. But we did get a blood sample in the same episode, which was very, very on point. But what are your thoughts on the concept of these twins? Because to me, it is just clear at this point in time that we are heading towards the people that discovered this incredibly rare gift, this incredibly rare unnatural witchcraft force, whatever you want to be it, that eventually that knowledge is going to appear into Sheev Palpatine a couple 100 years in the future, 80, 90 years in the future, who knows? But what is your thoughts on it? Because I think this is a really big thing. I think is being glossed over, that it's not deleting Anakin, it's not saying he's not important, it's just simply the knowledge of this has come through these people. I mean, it might not even come through these people, but from my perspective, that's where it's come from.
You know the old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day? You have the Mandalorian and the Bad Batch, which is currently delving into the cloning aspect of how Palpatine returned. Well, this is then doing the same thing, but in terms of how Anakin was created for those who haven't read the comics, in terms of as Anakin's actual creation, but that whole thing of how it's discovered, because people will look into things, people will research things. In terms of, you look at modern day medicine, for example, penicillin was discovered by accident, but that accident has gone to save countless thousands of lives over the years. It's a similar thing of nothing was ever done. Someone always did something first, and how you then get to the end point is how you get to the end point. Anakin is that ultimate end point. For Palpatine, this kind of is going to give you some of that background. I 100% agree. The witch part of it, I love. Again, I wonder if it's an offshoot of the Night Sisters or the Dathomiri. It's something around that. It's going to be. I don't think it's like a proto version. I just think it's an offshoot. I think it's, one has the thread, one has magic. They're both along the same lines, but somewhere down they're split somewhere. I mean, so Mother Coral is a Zabrak. Again, you have that for the Night Brothers. So you have these little bits being dropped here and there. So I love how it's all coming together. And you don't have to have read any of the expanded universe, any of the High Republic stuff to kind of get into this. I do agree slightly with what you said about 1, 2, and 3 probably should have been dropped together, but you make that argument, then should it be all of them? So, you kind of get the here and there, I guess.
It's like The Boys, isn't it? The Boys is dropping 3 tomorrow, and then the rest is weekly. And it's kind of like, I mean, to me, it's very off point, but like the Boys began as being all of it dropping at once. And then it was so popular, Amazon's like, okay, now we've got to drag it out because we need 2 months of subscription money, not 1 month. Which is also a big thing of what a lot Netflix now do everything in 2 parts purely because of that. They want 2 months of Netflix, not 1 month. Yeah. Sorry to cut in, but that's a really
it's fine. And to go off the Jedi being antagonists rather than protagonists, funny enough, my other half who's watching along, watched the episode and phoned me up immediately to say the more I delve into Star Wars, the more I don't like the Jedi because they are just dicks. And I go, well, the perspective of the High Republic especially is starting to see them on that decline, and you've got to see where they start to crumble. The Jedi have always been put on this pedestal, and for a reason. So to see the hubris coming into it, to see the arrogance, and to see the good and the bad, and you see that throughout this episode. Kel Nacker obviously doesn't say much, doesn't do much, but he kind of smiles at Ocean, kind of he allows her to look at what he's doing, and kind of becomes that benevolent kind of just presence there. Tobin is the big one though. Master Tobin, though, we know he takes the poison for a reason, and we don't know why, and we don't even see why. I don't think this episode, there's more to it, but I bring him up purely because you talk about the blood sample being taken. Big thing. They're not talking about midichlorians in this, but it's clearly part. And I think what they're trying to do now is those people who didn't like midichlorians in the prequels, that's fine. If you don't like it for whatever reason, you don't like it. But now they're not trying to justify it. I'm not going to use that word, but what I will say is they're trying to give lore to explain. They're kind of giving everyone the reasons as to what crops up here and there. Because I think the midichlorians, although not the be-all and end-all of the Force, they are a part of it. They're part of the living Force, and maybe if you have a high M count, obviously the Force might reside in you more because they are more highly sensitive to the Force and other things. But you're going to see bits and pieces woven here and there. And I think this episode, although not a complete flashback, I think when you get the other half to it, is going to build such a big piece. You're completely muted, George.
Sorry, I muted myself by accident. The difference is it's one of those where it's a weekly series. You are going to have the patience to wait week in, week out. And I say to people, hey, if you're not into it, great, wait. I've been telling people, maybe wait a few episodes and then see if you can get into it. If it wasn't Star Wars, I would be waiting till the series is done. I do that for the Marvel shows, the ones I've seen. Sorry, I should have said. I've been doing that for a lot more stuff. And the only shows I watch week to week, the ones where I'm like, can I categorically go a week without seeing this? Will it be ruined online? Will people be talking about it? Star Wars, yes. The Boys, yes. House Dragon, yes. Doctor Who, no. I've seen a couple of things. But I've been able to stay away because I don't have the friends that watch them. I've got 3 Doctor Who friends, but no one tweeting about it like they do with stuff like Star Wars. I mean, again, the amount of ridiculous stuff is in the last week. And it doesn't seem to be people's problem, the story. It seems to be a fire that's been proven all week long that there's a lot of fire in Star Wars. A lot more fire in Star Wars than I ever thought there had been until last week, if I'm being honest with you. God knows what the next week's going to bring. Probably trees or something. But it's just one of them where I like the time the witch is having. I like the fact it isn't that bog standard, hey, look, there was a miracle. 2 twins were born in a non-force sensitive camp. I like the fact, it's a tribe of witches on the run from the Jedi. They have seeked for shelter. They've tried to get somewhere not nearby. And you mentioned the Jedi as well. You're not too sure on them. I love that we aren't too sure on them. I mean, one of the things about growing up, and I know some people don't like the fact that the Jedi should be perfect. I respect that opinion, and a lot of people carry that opinion for decades. I love that Lucas and Filoni leaned into the dynamic for many years that, hey guys, you know what, the Jedi weren't perfect. Actually, they're fucking stupid when you really realize. And I've seen something I didn't think I'd ever know. You know this in new canon. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant was built on top of a Sith.
Yeah,
that's what we call it.
There's a Sith temple underneath.
Temple. What the hell did I forget? And the people like that could have been why the Jedi just never saw it coming. I was like, that's kind of stupid, but kind of funny because it would be that arrogant, wouldn't it? You know, like building your base on the remains of your enemies, and then guess
what? Why Palpatine then built his on top of the Jedi temple. Yeah. It's that layer on layer of I'm just gonna one up you, and it makes the Jedi stupid, which is really irritating from a Jedi fan to go. Yeah, I have to admit all these foibles, but they are.
Yeah, and I don't mind it from a storytelling perspective because what would you gain by having? And this is my kind of problem with the High Republic from the announcement get-go. Sorry, I'm just pouring a drink because it's getting into it now. When they announced it, I remember I think I said to you, I was like, but there were no Sith in this era. Where's the Old Republic? And again, I've not read the comics or the books. I know a lot of people that have. You're one of them. And a lot of people are dipping into them now because of the show. And they all seem to have a really fun time with it. And I'm very much happy to chill and say, hey, guys, as I said before, like, the books, comics, they're not necessarily for me. You will enjoy them, and I'll catch up to you when you start getting the TV shows, which you'll be getting. Maybe films in the future, probably doubtful. Hopefully games, because the new game is very good that's coming out later this year. And it's one of those where, again, it's what can you do in this era? And the fact that we are having witches, maybe not as the antagonists of the series, but a key part of the series component is these witches that are here. I want to know why they're on the move. What have they done? Who's alive? Because you do not see the body of the witch that carried the rest of them, which I think, I'm not saying, oh, they're dead till they're dead, but I think it's one of those where in storytelling, in modern storytelling, that's the sort of thing that people pinpoint. And she is almost the antagonist mother of the group of them, that I didn't carry them for no reason. I didn't carry them to be a Jedi. Like, we need them in our way or the highway. And I really, really loved the performance in this, especially from Jodie Turner-Smith, who I knew had been cast in the show. She's been in other trailers. She also was on After Yang with the same director. Sorry, I forgot to make a comment as well. Aaron Pert just watched the episode. He thoroughly enjoyed it and was surprised when he saw who directed it. And I kind of understand that too. It's a series they haven't gone for big hitting names of the directors. If people want to keep away from knowing who directed what, don't look at Wikipedia, but you can get the list of the directors in this. And to me, it's always exciting that Star Wars as an avenue, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful term, I'm more than happy for filmmakers to come on board when there are films to be made. But now we're in the episodic structure. I'm more than happy for someone to come on board on a series, direct a couple of episodes, make a big impact on the episodes. Then maybe they'll get their own series, maybe they'll get their own film. I think
Deborah Chow, great example.
Deborah Chow got Kenobi. Yeah, she got the whole Kenobi series. Favreau's obviously doing the film for Mando and Grogu. And then obviously Bryce Dallas Howard is the one we've all spoke about. That's the one I think everyone would love to see direct a film. And I like that TV can give other people the chance to take a dive into Star Wars. And hey, maybe they don't want to do a film. Maybe they just want to direct an episode one day at some point in their life. And they're going to get the opportunity to do so. And I think it's what can you do with your hour of screen time. And I think this episode was a really unique way to do it. We spoke about some witches. We spoke about the people that have been brought on board. Let's talk some Jedi, which is way more up your street than mine. But we have to talk about the quad. I don't know what we call them, the quadruple. Indira, Kalneka, Torben, and Sol. The people we've heard of the last few weeks, the people we've seen 16 years later. And we get to see the events of what's led. Well, we've seen some of the events of what's led to it. I love the fact that the Jedi are sort of just there to begin with. And they're scouting them up. We know some things up. We know they're a bit fishy to begin with. And then as we start seeing more about the witches, what they're trying to do, their logic, you kind of know the Jedi are going to appear. And I do like this dynamic that the Jedi were seen and they just tad up. Not like guns blazing, not attacking. It's just like, hey guys, we're here. Guess what? There are children here. We have the right to take them. I love that doesn't come across great. And it's something, if you really dive into like the Star Wars of the past 15 years, especially the Clone Wars, when there are so many episodes on Jedi taking children, the whole bounty hunter stuff with that too, Bad Batch doing something similar. It's really evil when you think about it. When it's like, we just take them, as the younger they are, the easier it is to train them, so we take them from their families when they're younger. And I've always quite liked that in a sadistic point of view, that is their goal. That, yes, they want to recruit them, but to rob them of their identity, to rob them of their family, put them in a new environment. Yes, the Jedi become their family. There are thousands of them, as they say. But there's still that inhumane side to it where, like, these are people with relatives, with family members, people have been brought up with. And we know the logic with having attachments. We've had them speak about Osha in the first episode, that she does have attachments, and she was maybe too old when they brought her in. But I love the fact that, once again, the heart of this is probably not a master at this point, is Jedi Soul. I guess it would be Jedi Knight at this point in time. Different haircut. He's going for his Qui-Gon Jinn vibes. He spoke about that's been his influence for Star Wars. I love the fact that's been his influence. Qui-Gon Jinn's one of the wisest Jedi that's ever been put to screen. And I like that we see that humanity side of him in this, which we saw in the first episodes, where he trusts Osha, where he's built that relationship with her without forming. He obviously has an attachment, but he's been able to do it at least in a somewhat professional manner. Versus the other Jedi who maybe, have got their lightsabers ready to go, who aren't quite sure what's going to happen. And I think I'm really curious to see what comes from next, because I can't give my opinion saying this is great. Sorry, do you want to speak? Sorry, I feel like I waffle for ages. I'll let you speak because I'm about to probably theorize something ridiculous.
That's fair. I mean, I have to. My problem is obviously being a Jedi fan. I see them taking the children, and I do see it from the point of view of it's not entirely right. I get why they do it. And what I'm hoping in the future, where you've got the whole Dawn of the Jedi and Old Republic eras that are coming, I'm hoping we see the reasons as to why it's not a good idea to train someone too late. Anakin is the prime example of this, but it's the only the only example we have so far. Osha is now the new example. However, you see she comes out the other side being, okay, yeah, she left the Jedi Order. We don't know why yet, and that's going to be in a flashback at some point. But she left the Jedi Order, became a mechanic. Did she turn evil and try to take over the galaxy? No, she literally just became a mechanic because she needed a job and cracked on with life. Just because they are one way doesn't mean it's going to equal the other. But you have Kel Naka, who, as I said, he's kind of quiet and reserved. He's a Wookiee. He's kind of hard to miss. But he kind of is in the background and does the job well of kind of being the one that everyone looks at without noticing. Torben, obviously, the Padawan at this point. He's Sol's Padawan, so again, doesn't say a huge amount. But Indara's kind of the more vocal, and Sol is kind of the backup. She's the one that kind of wants to go a bit more guns blazing. He kind of preaches more the, look, we're not here to start trouble. We're here just to have a look. And, then obviously when it goes like Osha and May, like, cool, yeah, we want to test you because, yeah, we'd like to offer you that chance. Osha obviously then takes it, May doesn't. There's a whole thing. We'll get onto that in a minute. But the Jedi perspective is very interesting because as a Jedi fan, as a High Republic fan of, the Order and of them being how they were at their peak, you're starting to see the cracks appear and starting to see the hubris, but you're also still starting to see those who hold up to the older ideals. Sol's very much the kind of Obi-Wan, Stellan Gios style of upholding the morals and values of the Jedi whilst being mindful of those around him. And that's kind of the vibe I get.
Yeah, and I quite like that as well. And it just for that, you mentioned Kalneka, I want to jump on. He's the one that intrinsically spots the Osha first, when they're sort of hiding in the group. And it's that sort of look. And it didn't make me think it's a good thing just having an apprentice because the language barrier would be an absolute catastrophe for anyone to learn under. And whoever taught him, fair play. But I like the fact that there is something different, not just the fact he's a Wookiee, but there's something in him that the fact they've waited. He's the end of episode 2, and he'll be probably the key of episode 4, I feel. And if people are wondering, in the trailer, there is the moment, I keep calling him Tommen, Master Torben, but obviously he played Tommen Baratheon in Game of Thrones. There is a moment where Kalneka attacks him in the trailer, I believe, from memory. And it's a younger looking Tommen Baratheon, not the old wrinkly Count Olaf version. So again, we know we're going to get a second flashback. I just hope it's an entire episode. I know I keep saying that now, but I really like they're setting up this dynamic with the Jedi. The fact that he's quick to go with his lightsaber. He's a Padawan. He is the Padawan of Trinity from the Matrix as well, for God's sake. I mean, Master Indira, the first one to be killed by May. I think there's got to be good reason she was the first one to be killed by May. And again, we don't have the perspective of what happened upstairs. I'm going to keep calling it. But the fact, whilst all the aggro was happening, it was Sol who was looking for Osha. It's him that's built the relationship with her, and she's going to become his Padawan. And I'm just saying, I absolutely loved the Phantom Menace. Like we're going to do the tests, and it's still the classic, a cup, a speeder, and there.
But and then that's not a mountain. Yeah.
And I love that stuff, and it shows his wisdom. And again, then it's the witches like, from the Jedi perspective, what are these witches doing to tell their kid, no, you're not going to be a Jedi? What are they cooking? Is there stuff that the Jedi know about that we don't? And it leaves the door open for so much more intrigue with this. And again, as someone that isn't in the know of the High Republic, you don't need to have read comics or books to be able to follow the series at this point in time. Maybe it's helping you. And I know there are a couple of characters, the green one from the first two, but it's just one of those where it's very curious. And again, leading up to where this episode goes, because we know they've all been killed in a fire, the family, that was told 2 episodes ago. We know it's going to happen at some point in this episode. And the fact it's May locking her own sister in the room, trying to kill her because she wants to leave her. There's attachments and there's that. But I absolutely loved that this is the turn of events. She mentioned that she became a mech. Was it a mechanic?
Mechanic, yeah.
Mechanic. So basically just before they had astromechs. Makes sense. And I like the fact that we're seeing that. Like, hey, look, she got herself out of a tricky situation. She was on the run. Even the parallel of the two of them on the crumbling bridge together with one another. It leaves a lot of questions for what is going to happen and what had happened before. The fact they are both alive at that point. The fact May goes to the tree and her sister isn't there. Who found May at that tree? That's one of the questions you might be wondering. Is there a certain dark side user lurking at that point thinking, I've heard about these witches that have done this crazy thing. Could there be a Jedi returning who's thinking about this too? And There are a lot of things to go with it, but I'm really intrigued. And it's hard to talk about this episode because, it is 4 minutes, but because there is so much enigma around the story, it's not the easiest to dive into. It does become a lot of speculation filled thoughts, but I kind of wondered what your thoughts are on that too, especially once you get the Jedi coming in towards the ending.
Yeah, I mean, when Maine locked Osha in the room, I was shocked because as much as I saw it happening in terms of May being the one to burn it down, because we were told that was going to happen, but I didn't quite. I took it with a grain of salt. I was like, okay, did she actually set it on fire, or was that view twisted because May and Oshi don't really know each other's alive until the end of the second episode? They kind of properly go, okay, I've heard it, now I can see you. Yeah, clock on, you are real. And I think there's a lot more to it than that, especially when you go through the rest of the scene when there's too many dead for a fire that didn't really get that much going. So there's a lot more to kind of unpack with it. But May locking Osha in there and May then expecting her to still be there afterwards, that's the blind kind of rage and justification of a dark side user you're going to get. And I do wonder who it's going to be. I don't think there's going to be someone who rocks up entirely afterwards. I think it's going to be going down a dark track kind of route for her to find whoever this Acolyte is, but we'll get onto that in the next few episodes, I guess. But there's still more to tell on top of that. But to have the Jedi come in, because again, Torben, when he takes the poison, he says, I'm sorry, please forgive me. But in this episode, there's nothing, I mean nothing, that shows why he needs forgiveness. Yes, okay, he's kind of a bit of a rash thinker, but you have Sol who teaches in that moment of, it's okay, Padawan, watch what I do kind of thing, when he takes his lightsaber off and hands it to Osha and goes, look, this is what a Jedi, Jedi's weapon is. This is a lightsaber. I hear a lot of people complaining about the thicker lightsabers. The one thing I'm going to say from a canonical point of view, look at the Guardian protocols, but from the non-canonical point of view, from a prop point of view, they are now using what we have at home, as in terms of a lightsaber with a blade that goes into it. So you have all the electronics that go inside of it. So actually, it's the right size for the prop for the toy. So it kind of makes sense it's going to be the right size for what they use on screen. Although I'm a huge fan of what they've done here, because the lightsabers look like lightsabers again. They look unstable. They don't look too clean as they have done like in Kenobi and stuff. But I think that might be a production thing. But I'm digressing. I like a lot of what you see from this, but I'm very curious as to the May's half of this story, and especially how she comes to the point of, I need to burn everyone, including my sister, but I don't want to kill her. It's issues and attachments there for you. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's something we may get to explore. And if the next one is May's point of view, maybe we'll get past where this episode finished. Maybe we'll get like halfway, where we were prior. Let's say we're halfway, the moment where Sol comes in, we sort of have the scene together. Maybe once we start branching off into May, we'll start at maybe, let's say, halfway through today's episode, and it will go past where today finished, and there'll be more perspective. And in between getting to that flashback, we're going to have more present-day stuff. We're going to have Kelneka. We're going to have the Jedi going to him, trying to figure out what on earth's going on. I think he's going to get killed. I know that there are murmurs, and I'm not doing spoilers or anything, but I know that there is a Predator-themed episode or an Alien-themed episode that has been spoken of by Leslie Headlands. I really hope it's Kelneka in the forest. I think I said that last week, but an idea of people trying to hunt down a Wookiee Jedi, but turn it on itself. If they're saying the Jedi the antagonist, I know you can't really make him the Wookiee the antagonist for something like this, but I'm really curious about if it is a Kelneka episode, what that could be, what could happen with it. And that's something I think is going to be next week. And I think once you get to episode 5, you'll probably get more of a cliffhanger, 6 flashback, 7 and 8, your big finale. And I've not got a problem with that, because I'm intrigued where the story is going. And I know we've been speculating about, I know we spoke about lots of stuff, but is there anything else we want to talk about before we segue on to final thoughts? Because, again, it wasn't the longest episode, and we don't need to drag out videos for the sake of dragging out videos either.
No, not really. Although the one thing I will say, actually, funny enough, it just came back to me. You mentioned Kelneka, obviously, if he had a master who wasn't a Wookiee, difficult to teach. Fun enough, in the High Republic books, there's a Wookiee Jedi called Buriaga, whose master learned Shrirook to be able to teach him. And then his friend Belzetafar then also learned Shrirook to be able to communicate when they went out on missions together. And it's because of that friendship he was able to, funny enough, find him after the tragic events of Starlight Beacon. So there's a whole thing behind that. But just as a little, funny tidbit, actually, you say that, and it's so much in there that kind of gives those nods. But yeah, before we kind of wrap up on this one, this episode for me, when you watch it from the perspective of, if you watch it from a complete flashback, I think you're missing the point. If you watch it from the one half, I think it tells a bigger picture, especially going right back to the beginning when May was almost forcing on Osha the whole mantra of that little poem they share, the dyad, which, funny enough, we get the themes throughout Star Wars. Yes, it's like poetry, it rhymes. I know it's corny, but at the same time, actually, this is one of those points where I think they've already hit the mark better in this than they did in the sequels.
Yeah, I definitely think the exploration side of things, especially of not knowing who to trust, but what they're doing with characters, potential antagonists, protagonists, the writing, not necessarily dialogue writing, especially on kids, it's always so much harder. It's hard to write dialogue for a kid when you're an adult, especially on something like Star Wars.
Although, sorry, to jump in on that one point, I do think the kid they've got in to do, the young Osha May, has done a fantastic job with it.
Yes, the acting's good in it. I like the acting. I think, again, scripts, especially dialogue's tricky for young performers. But what I kind of want to add into it is that I like what the story is doing, that it feels, and this is the thing for me, I don't mind a villain of the week. I love my Mandalorian, chapter 1, 2, 3, but my Mandalorian doesn't need to be Andor. I love Andor. Hey guys, it's a 3-episode arc. Tick. Then we're going to get another 3-episode arc. Tick. I'm down for all of that sort of stuff. And hey, it's going to be one continuous story across 8 episodes, but we're going to explore back and we're going to flesh out, what it is with May, what it is with Osha, what have the Jedi done, what is happening behind the scenes with the Sith. And I think the series is going in that way. And if the episodes keep up like this, it's not my... I don't want to say it's not my favorite episode. It's so wildly different to 1 and 2. The problem with episode 1 and 2 is they flow so well. I can't sit here and say I've got a favorite episode so far. I just think the series will benefit from a few more. And again, I mean, I wouldn't call you casual. If you're 40 minutes in watching at this point, you're probably watching one of them. But if it hasn't been for you, that's fine. Give it a few weeks. Try and avoid online. Avoid people taking clips out of context. Avoid people just discussing it. If you can get to a point where you can binge 5 or 6 episodes, if that's unraveling the story into the must-watch territory, then you're probably going to be in for a better time. And I hope it does hit that must-watch territory. Because I'll be honest, it's not fully there for me yet. But I am here because I like the enigma surrounding it. And if it doesn't hit the landing, I'll be gutted. I'll be as good as the rest of you. But I do think we have some potential at this point in time. On a side note, before I get my final thoughts, I'm going to quickly flag to people that live in England, easy for London, not me though. BFI IMAX is showing the Star Wars prequel trilogy on Saturday the 10th of August. And they're also showing the original trilogy on Saturday the 31st of August. And they're showing the sequel trilogy on Saturday the 6th of July. So Star Wars fans that are curious, that want a decent day trip, Revenge of the Sith is basically sold out. It pretty much sold out within like 5 minutes of it going up, which is insane for a 20-plus-year-old film. But do have a look at those. And the Prince Charles Cinema are also showing all of them over the coming months. So it looks like Disney has somewhat tightened their grip on the theatrical releases for cinemas. But if you do want to see Star Wars on the big screen, especially the prequels, because this show is very prequel-filled, if I'm honest, that's something I'd very much look at doing. Me and Sam are going to be at all 3. You're gutted, you're at a wedding, so you can't go. And obviously, distance-wise, it's not easy for Dave to get to. So maybe there'll be more screenings in the next few years. But I did want to flag that because, we're not a Star Wars channel, but we do a lot of Star Wars. And there are obviously opportunities for people to watch them on the big screen because what the Phantom Menace really just taught us is that there are people... Hey, guys, you ready for this one? The Lord of the Rings Extended Edition Trilogy re-release grossed $5 million this weekend. That's $2 million a film. Phantom Menace by itself, $16 million. I know what I'd be watching. But ironically, I did watch Lord of the Rings this weekend, just not at the cinema, just at home, the first 2. But yes, that's everything I can say on the Acolyte this week. Phil, the same for you?
Yeah, there's not very much. I mean, apart from the fact that from a episode I wasn't expecting, because I wasn't expecting a flashback. I was expecting the Kel Naka story. I was expecting a flashback, but later on. I can't complain. In fact, as I said to you before we came live, it gave a bunch of answers, but gave a bunch more questions. But for what we've had so far, I mean, I'm hooked anyway. I was always going to be a little bit more biased, but just because I was going to be a little bit more biased, I think I also then had that high level expectation. So for me, so far, it's kind of met that, and I'm well excited for what's next. But this episode, as a big props to, I don't know the actor's name, who's playing the young Osha May. She's done fantastic. But also, I'm excited to see what comes next. I'm excited to see, because the discussions I'm already having with friends and family about it. I mean, I watched both episodes 2 and 3 today with my dad. He watched the first episode of the weekend. His things, he turns around immediately and goes, so we have to wait until next week now? Damn it. And I like that from someone who, yes, he's a big Star Wars fan, but for someone who isn't that vocal, it's nice to see Alyssa's reactions. Yeah, really enjoyed this one.
Excellent. We've got a comment by Joseph. If you're watching, hi guys, are we talking spoilers? Yes, we are. We are signing off though, so we'll give it another 30 seconds a minute. But if you comment something, we will bring it up, we'll answer it. And the same for anyone. And listen, guys, if you're watching it later, you can of course still make comments. We will reply to comments, especially on the show. So please do comment your thoughts on the Acolyte, especially episode 3. And if you like this video, please do share it with anybody else. It does help support the channel. We get some more Star Wars fans in that discussion. And we also want to let you know what else we're working on. Doctor Who's going live every Tuesday. House of Dragon returns on Monday. There are films coming out too, but a god-awful lot of telly at the moment. So if you want to find out other stuff we're working on, get us on social media at linktree.com/cinemasavvy. You can get a link to our top in Redbubble in the description also below. Joe says, what spoilers would we like? Mate, we've been talking about episode 3, so we don't need any spoilers, but we were talking about episode 3. So if you've seen the episode 4 stuff, do not comment that. But this is going to be a nice way to end the stream. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.
See you.